Um, so a long time ago, I think I must have been about 12. I was living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, blissfully. I loved it. I can't tell you how much I loved it. I just loved it, everything about it. But anyway, I remember, as puberty and fascination with girls and stuff began to loom upon me. I think it must have been upon me already, and had been upon me, frankly, for some time before that. I was taken aside by a pal's older brother, and I was given a sort of lesson. I was given a talking to about what one needed to do to be attracted to get a girlfriend, was get a girlfriend or get whatever that was. And it was a very elaborate process. I remember listening, and I listened to him, and I have to say that I listened without nodding my head, because I had an understanding of this already. I didn't really need this advice, but I thought I would listen because it would make him feel good. So he went on. He went on with this list of things that one needed to do, um, um, and they all involved money. They all involved buying of gifts, treating, and all that. Anyway, so I listened to this. So I'm 12, right? The point of this essay. I was watching a YouTube today, Novara Media. Richard Sanders, who is an award-winning TV producer specializing in history and news and current affairs. He has made more than 50 films, mostly for Channel 4. He has written for a number of publications, including the Daily Telegraph and the Boston Globe, and is also the author of 2 history books. To give qualifications, interviewed by Aaron Bastani of Novara Media. I like these chaps. Quote, I discovered, he said, Richard Sanders said, I discovered a strange phenomenon that rich, powerful men are often as not obsessed with manifesting their power by hurting women and children. The question then, he said, is this true of most or all men who only don't manifest this behavior and obsession because they have not become rich and powerful? Depressing and terrible thought. Or is this only true of men obsessed with attaining wealth and power? Then almost immediately, as I was driving, somebody popped up on YouTube, a young woman telling us, an attractive young 20-something, telling us she is a millionaire and will only date billionaires. So, well, a nasty cul-de-sac in it. So I was thinking about this and the Epstein thing and all of that, and I was remembering that period in Trinidad, in Pittsburgh, sorry, when the questions, when one was asked, often quite obsessively, about one's plans and what one wanted in the future and stuff like that, and I didn't really have a clue, and I think part of the reason was that I had had such a vivid childhood to that point, such a vivid and various childhood to that point, that I really wanted it to continue more than anything else. My future would have been a continuation of my present at that present time. And so I became an actor eventually, because you remain perpetually in that space. So there was never any and I remember I did say, they asked me very seriously at 11 years old or 12, they said to me, what do you want to do with your future? And I said, because I couldn't think of anything else, I thought of Gilligan's Island, which I had been watching the day before on television. And I thought, oh, I want to be an actor on television. That looks great. And they all sort of hovered around me like Dickensian, Murdstones, saying, oh, no, that is no, 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 no. And I ignored them. It was a habit in those days with adults. And went on my merry way. And then later on, 13, 14, 15, stuff like that, one becomes aware of kids who are pondering that. And they seem to mostly be thinking about my best friend at the time um, wanted to be a trumpet player. I think trumpet, maybe a drummer. And Pittsburgh is a very good place for all of that. So that was going on. And his brother, I believe, had become a doctor. I met his brother once or twice, but older boy, or was on the road to becoming a doctor. And his parents, Michael's parents, were survivors of the Warsaw Ghetto. Just extraordinary. And the dad had come over and become a plumber, and he in his own world, he was massively successful, and he was. Gosh, to have gotten through that, and then to come to America and to become this tradesman, and he ran his own anyway. So I was not. I never encountered people who wanted simply to be rich. It was usually attached to I want to study railways. I want to do this. I want to do that. So that all made sense to me. And then some people, like being in Gilligan's Island, would have made me rich, but that was not the consideration. And most of the people I knew were happily middle class, so they had never really wanted for anything, so there wasn't that extra impetus. But anyway, what is interesting to me today with all the issues is men particularly, and they would just say, no, I want to be rich. And there will be elements of what I consider our highest value, which is fulfillment. There will be elements of fulfillment in being incredibly wealthy. There'll be all kinds of things that attach to it that are part of the particularly the male and nowadays everybody, that idea of being comfortable, safe, secure, etc., but also of having power. And there's always discussed about, they say, men of great wealth and power. And power has many definitions to me. And I've very seldom met what I would call a powerful, wealthy person. They're powerful because they're usually employers, and they can fire you. So there's a kind of threat in it. But this, to be honest, it looks to me like the desire to be wealthy is compensation for a lack of essential real power. So one becomes wealthy, and wealth seems to all people, the trappings of wealth seem usually to be about, I don't take the bus, I don't take the train, I take taxis, I eat in 5-star places. In other words, my life is very exclusive. And so I can be very selective about who I have to deal with on a day-to-day and all that sort of stuff. And around this whole Epstein thing is a rather fascinating discussion about how he procured the right people for the other right people, and this was a big deal to them. This is so foreign to me. I can't even fathom it. But that seems to be part of the obsession. So the young boy, the 12, 13-year-old who decides that's important, is might be and seems to be on the evidence quite pathological, antisocial. And one knew this, one sensed it anyway, long before Epstein. It's in all of the histories. If you look closely at the histories from Shakespeare to Homer, you're looking at that kind of need that people have to be to be exclusive. They're special. They feel they're superior to other people. They don't want to have to deal with the hoi polloi. They want to be surrounded by people. So there's and there will be an element of racism in it all. Um, um, and then you combine that with the sex drive, and it seems to me that I mean, I can't conceive, for instance, of, I've never done this. My sister says, you can't, that can't be true. I'm an old man now, and I've never been to a prostitute. Just because I can't make that arrangement with myself. That, anyway. So, but clearly this is something that Prince Andrew could overcome. You know, there he is, getting fat and unattractive in his whatever, and so he can pay for it. That's peculiar, but it does remind me anyway of the notion. You know, I've done a lot of work with Shakespeare in Shakespeare plays, and by and large, it is a study of psychopaths. He writes about the wealthy. He writes about the monarchy. He writes about monarchs. He puts lovely words into their mouths. He creates wonderful human beings out of, for me, Henry V and Hamlet. But he surrounds them with really venal people. And so one almost wonders whether there is, and they started to explore it in the Brutalists, not very well, but they did start to explore it, is this idea of those people who at 12 years old would say, yeah, I want to be rich and I'm going to do everything. I'm going to apply myself, which is a great value in our culture. I'm going to apply myself, and I'm going to work, and I'm going to be single-minded to become incredibly wealthy. And that seems to be Jeffrey Epstein's drive. It seems that his drive for wealth was completely unattached to any other part of his persona. He doesn't seem to be a creative person or anything like that. He just seems to have wanted to be wealthy in order to do this and that. And in a sense, we're all hoisted by that, because in my opinion, in my experience, wealth compensates for many another shortcoming. And because in particular cultures, we are so craven about it. In the United States, it's actually become, in order to have a decent life, one needs to be inordinately wealthy. In other words, one needs to be paid beyond any possible value when one is contributing to the society, which is a good way of measuring these things, I think. You know, there shouldn't be a meritocracy. There should be a worthocracy. How much are you contributing to your country, to your community, whatever it is? You know, so you might have millionaires competing to pay us more taxes than anybody else. That would be fun. But of course it doesn't happen. So yeah, just those thoughts.